Hey, good morning to those of you out there in the West Coast, way out in the Pacific, Hawaii. Thanks for joining. Early good morning for you guys. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a sunny day for a couple of more days, and then we get real cold weather, which I like. Today, we're going to be talking about how to build new relationships in the federal government. It's a little bit of a different take on the same process, right? So I always talk about the same process, but I like looking at needs that we have from different angles, because sometimes you might hear my message and I'm coming from this angle and it makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't really completely hit. But if I come at it from a different angle and a different angle, it begins to make sense, and it is delivered in a way that you can consume it. So that's why I like to hit the same topic, something as vital as relationships. We know that relationships are important to us in government contracting, and so getting started building those is really important, and I'll always keep coming back to talking about them. Okay, so I want to turn off my little stream here so I don't have that thing running across the top. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know who I am, I'm Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Live federal sales training, also on YouTube, but I'm streaming it on LinkedIn, where I teach process, procedures, and tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow the process A through Z, we're going to have predictable results. And that's what I want for you. And I know that's what you want for yourself, is repeatable, predictable results. So before we get too far, do me a favor, help buyers, help me, help the people in the community remember who you are by putting your company name and 2 or 3 words to describe your core competency. It makes it easy for it to just sink into our memory. Don't ever feel like you've done this too many times, right? If you go to a vendor outreach session, an industry day, a conference, training that I do, training that other people do, make sure you put your company name and your core competency in a way that you begin to be known. This is part of building relationships out there. Fundamentally, it begins with people knowing who you are. And so make it easy for us. Remove the friction by telling us over and over again. You can never tell us too often what you do. And you'll know you'll have reached it with me when I go, oh, that's Hunter. Her company does Microsoft and SharePoint, things like that, right? It's like, okay, I guess I don't have to tell Neil anymore. Go ahead and do that. And then the other thing is, as we go forward, so put that company name and core competencies into the chat. As we go forward, I'm going to ask you to occasionally put something into the chat that just lets me know you're hearing and getting what I'm trying to teach today. So that's really appreciated when you do that. Helps me see the engagement in there, but it also helps me be able to understand what messages come across really clear and which ones maybe I take a better stab at it the next time or something. So go ahead and do that. Last thing, finally, I just wanted to say thank you to our sustaining members. Without sustaining members, we could not do this day after day. We could not create all the content that we create. And so I just really wanted to say thank you very much for being a sustaining member. Okay, I'm going to get rocking and rolling. I generally can't see chat. Please engage in chat, right? That's your community. You're here for training, but you also get to take advantage of the community that's over in the chat. And so feel free to engage in there. If you're open to connections, let people know. But for me, I'm going to focus on trying to deliver the message to you today that I want to get to you. Okay. So I'm going to cover 3 things today in this fast training around how to build new relationships in the federal market, right, with federal buyers. And those 3 things I want to cover today are: you need to determine the right relationships that you want to build, right, that you need in order to succeed in government contracting. So you need to determine which ones are right for you. We're going to talk about that. Second thing I'm going to talk about is the importance of researching people before you reach out to them, knowing who they are, learning a little bit about them, et cetera. And then the third thing is I want to talk to you about a little bit more actionable here of starting the knowing, liking, and trust process, right? People do business, or they talk with those they know, like, and trust. And I want to help you understand not only just the importance, but things you can do to really get that process rolling. So just beginning with determining the right relationships, I wanted to use just a little story that actually came up yesterday, right? I planned for this training last week on what I was going to talk about, but it was so perfect yesterday when I was working with a customer, and there was several of us in this meeting, and a lot of activity had been done to prep them, and she had said, hey, I'm going to start going out to conferences. I'm going to commit. I'm going to get myself out and do a lot more business development and outreach actually at the conferences. And then the conversation flowed a little bit to, I'm optimistic I'll go. But what I tend to find is I go to these conferences and I come back and either I'm not getting a lot of traction or I'm not hearing back from people when I reach back. And what I was suggesting to her and what I want to suggest to you is that when you go to a conference, and conferences aren't bad, but when you go to a conference, it's kind of like this shotgun approach, if you will, where the shotgun is just a bunch of pellets in a shotgun blast when it goes out compared to a single bullet that goes out. And when you look at that, you're reaching out to all these different people who perhaps not even are on your radar, that they're not even overly helpful to you, and you're engaging with them. And so you're spending energy. What I want you to do is to think about determining the right people, the right relationships that you need to move forward. And so one of the first things you need to do is just make sure, what agency am I trying to build relationships with? This particular customer I was talking about, they want to get into the Navy. It's like, okay, if you're going to a Navy conference, that's pretty easy because almost everybody's Navy. But if you go to, let's say a broader small business conference that GSA or somebody else hosts, well, now you've got all these different agencies that could attract you. But what you really want to do is focus down and say, the Navy is who I want to meet. And so that when I go to the conference, I'm going to be looking for Navy people. When I'm looking at, doing my homework to try to target people to call, I'm only going to be looking for Navy people when I'm doing it on the internet. When I'm looking for teammates, right, I'm going to be looking for teammates related to the Navy. When I start doing that, my agency focus allows me to determine the right relationships. In this case, it's Navy. So then the next level down is inside the federal government. Well, what type of person what role, right, will those people sit in that you're trying to meet? And so if you're trying to get in and just understand how to get going in an agency, then you want to be able to find small business specialists as an example. If you find small business specialists, they will help you begin to do your homework, give you guidance on where to go, and help you maybe get prepared to talk to program office people. If you're really good in data or cyber or construction or something, and you know where you're at and you're experienced in government contracting, well, you might say, the roles we're trying to find within the federal agency are people in the program office. And I've done previous training about how to find these different types of stakeholders. But when you're determining the right relationship, don't just blindly go into an agency. Say to yourself, who do I really want to meet? Do I want to meet the contracting officers, the small business specialists, or the program office people? And I'll just tell you really quickly, and I've done a whole training on this, is that those three types of people, I describe them as focuses of receptivity, people willing to just chat with you. Small business specialists are a perfect example. Focuses of dissatisfaction, these tend to be the program office people who have the need. And then focuses of power are the contracting officers, the ones who sign the contract award to give it to you, right? And so understanding who you want to reach out to will help you be able to find more of those people. It also helps you when you reach out to me or 1,000 other people you might know and say, hey, do you know anybody in the Navy who does this? I can say, oh, yeah, I know this person. But if you say, hey, do you know anybody in the Navy? I'm like, well, I know a lot of people. And then I don't actually help you because I don't see where I can succeed. So when you focus, you help both yourself and me succeed in moving you forward and finding people. And the last one is teammate roles, right? If you're going to reach into building right relationships in the federal buyer side, sometimes the way you reach them is through teammates. So an example is this morning, I was talking with somebody about the different types of roles of the people you would want to meet. And one of my favorite, if you're already doing business with a large prime as an example, is to go into their contract vehicle page on their website, find the program manager for, let's say, Seaport Next Gen or Oasis, right? These contract vehicles, find the program manager, and perhaps through them, you can have an introduction meeting that gets you onto their team to be able to participate in one level or another on task orders that come out. Perhaps they introduce you to the business development people within that large government agents or a large prime contractor. And perhaps they introduce you to the program manager who's actually out there. I did this before with a customer, navigating them to GDIT, to the program manager who was responsible for about a $250 million a year contract in the Navy. And my customer was able to connect with GDIT and within a matter of weeks be able to get in and work with them and get on their team, actually get on the task order and start filling positions. They had experience. Keep in mind, right? You have to find out where you're at. If you don't have a lot of experience, that scenario is not going to work for you. But the idea of knowing who within the large prime we want to talk to. In this case, I used somebody that I considered more of a focus of receptivity, a contract vehicle program manager or an SBLO. They might be more broadly open to hearing about how you could help their internal colleagues. Okay, so if you're understanding what I'm talking about here, about determining the relationships that you need before you start researching or going to a conference, et cetera, just put "I want you" into the chat. The reason I'm saying "I want you," it's kind of going back to that old World War II poster of, "I want you." We're trying to get you to join the Army, join the military or something. But you want to know who you're trying to reach out to and build a relationship. I want you. That's who I want to build a relationship with. So put that in the chat if that makes sense. I want you. So the second thing that I'm going to go into here is researching people. So if you've identified who they are and you begin to find their name, number, and email, you want to research people before you reach out to them. One of the things that popped into my head as I was doing this prep is remembering back to just high school or college. The teacher would assign you a chapter to read before the next class. And so many people didn't read it, and so they weren't able to engage in conversations with the teacher. Or they'd ask questions that were obviously in the chapter. But if you had read the chapter, when you come to the class, you're able to participate with the teacher in what's going on, right? You're not learning for the first time about history or science or whatever it is. You're actually then able to get into a dialogue with your professor or your teacher. Well, it's the same thing with your federal buyers. If you're going to reach out and have meetings with them, take the time to research them, research their agency, et cetera. And when you go in to have meetings, you'll be able to talk to them about their needs and their challenges, their goals from the information you were able to find during your research efforts. And so there's a couple of ways that you can actually do research. One of my favorite is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where real-time conversations are going on. Just this morning, I've got up, I closed it for the moment because I'm in here, but I have open a whole cloud discussion from the head of the Army Cloud. He posted something out today, and he was talking about the challenge between buying cloud technology, building cloud technology, and I think securing cloud technology. But the point is, he's talking about how he sees it should be and the importance of it. And the reason I like that kind of research is because if I wanted to go in and meet him and I sell cloud services, well, I certainly could get an understanding of how he thinks about cloud and what's important for not just the Army, but he actually thinks, broadly on the whole DoD side of the house. But that's important because then I could sit there and have conversations saying, hey, Paul, I was reading what you were saying here and I'd like to pull a thread because I think we could really help in this particular area, but I wanted to understand what your thinking is. And now Paul and I are having a dialogue, right? I'm not trying to get him to regurgitate what he's already put out there. So take the time to get on LinkedIn. Quick example, there's a CIO in, I can't remember where he's at now. I did a whole post. I feel bad that I can't remember. But one of the best pieces of advice that I heard from him that I shared, and he loved the fact that I shared it, is that he doesn't like it when people come and meet with him and they ask questions like, hey, are you a Microsoft shop? Are you an Oracle shop? Do you believe in this thing or do you believe in that thing? He says, I put all that information out. I write articles, I do blog posts, I do these other things. If somebody had took a minimal effort to research, they would have learned that and they would have understood my thinking and come and had a different type of dialogue. And so to avoid that frustration and to give yourself more, confidence and power in that meeting to be able to get things out of it that'll be valuable to both of you, research. So another quick way to research is industry days. You can go into industry days, participate in them, or just find their slides, right? I put content out constantly about industry days when I find them. I just found one last week that I'll put out, today, tomorrow. But it's just 20, 30 slides. And in there, I can see this thread. And nowadays, some of the government is really getting to the stage saying, this is what we need from industry. Well, imagine how much better your conversations with those target relationships will be if you come in and say, hey, I was reading you talking about this is what you need from industry. This is not our world, but this particular area you were talking about is our world. I'd love to expand on this and have a discussion and pull a thread on some of these bullets. No, that's awesome. You researched my deck that's out there. You found it. So industry day events are awesome. And then the third tip here is Strategic documents. These are one of my favorite things to go to understand an agency, right? If I'm trying to build a relationship, let's say that Army cloud, head of cloud, right, Paul, it's not just about reading what he posts out in his things, but also about reading strategic documents related to the Army and even DoD. Where are they trying to go? So I can bring that information back into the conversations I have with these people, which is about, researching them before you reach out. So if you understand what I'm saying there about the value and kind of some of the ways you can do research, just put homework matters into the chat. Homework matters. So I'm just looking at a quick chat. I got a little sidetracked. So my issue on government contracts, retiring, but not so much that I can't see the thought. I have to come back to that thought, Bill, but I will. Hey, quick thing, interruption, just before I go to the last bullet about know, like, and trust. I just wanted to let you know that we're finishing up our BD business development process workshop. And so we're finishing up with our current cohort in that program or in that workshop. And it's been fantastic for them. We're starting a new cohort, but it's only 4 companies. We only work with 4 companies at a time in this workshop. If you're interested in kind of kickstarting your BD, go to bdinabox.com. That's just a site I have set up for that. Gus will probably put a link into the chat, but just let me know if you're interested in learning more. And on that site, bdinabox.com, you'll find really the information I would share with you, but I'll be happy to follow back up with you. And this tends to be for companies that are at a little bit of a higher level, ready to go to the next level, but you're trying to kickstart the business development part, especially getting into an agency, having these relationships. So if you're interested, just go to that site. All right, let me wrap up with starting the know, like, and trust process. So people do business with those they know, like, and trust, right? I also like to say people talk with those they know, like, and trust. And as you go forward, it's really important to kind of understand the value of people knowing, liking, and trusting you. So let's start with knowing you, right? To me, knowing is just being visible. If you're visible out there, someone will see you. In the old days, they used to have phone books. If your name was in the phone book, I might know you. If you did an ad, if you had an ad up at a local minor league baseball team, we would begin to start to know you. Nowadays, you've got social media, and it's so much easier to get visibility out there where you're pushing it. But more importantly to me is this passive marketing approach for being visible. Being visible is about when somebody is looking for you. They're either looking for a company exactly like you, or they're looking for somebody who can give them some advice on, hey, I'm looking for the right way to do cloud services or something, or top 10 tips on cybersecurity best practice for an agency, whatever, things like that. If you're visible when they're looking, that'll really help go a long way for people trying to find you and to know you, right? I do these events. This is one way for me to get people to know me and to know the GovCon Chamber and the mission we're on. So a couple of examples of passive marketing and ways to keep people visible. Number one is always the dynamic small business search tool, DSBS. It's your small business profile, and it's made up of GSA's SAM.gov profile registration, right? And SBA's DSBS extra fields. And those two make up your small business profile. It's the number one search tool for government buyers when they're looking for small businesses. They will come into this tool and do a search. Whole separate training on that. But your dynamic small business search tool, go look at it. Is it populated so that you can at least be found by the keywords? Second thing is supplier portals. When you fill that out, now you get all the information about your company. Just go to supplier portals. For example, if you want to work with NavSup or NavAir in the Navy, these two organizations in the Navy, they have their own registration. HHS has their own supplier portal for small businesses. Go in there and register. You don't have to do anything extra. Just look at your DSBS profile, copy it over, which HHS and Navy should just be doing on their own. Soapbox moment. And then two other really important passive marketing tools is your capability statement, right? When you have that done and it's complete, you have it on your website, you have it on your LinkedIn profile, you give it to somebody, they put it into a hard drive. All of these places, your capability statement will be surfaced up when somebody's looking for a company like yours. And so that's a great tool. And then the last one, going with the cap statement, is LinkedIn. Make sure that you're visible on LinkedIn. And so how can you be visible on LinkedIn leads to the next tip in the know, like, and trust process is be engaged. Don't just sit back, right? An example is if you are here in this event today, are you engaged in the chat? Even something as simple as just putting the things I say, but have you put your company name in. If you go to a vendor outreach session, do you go and sit in the chair and listen to the people and then go to the matchmaking and then go home? Or are you being engaged? For example, are you holding up your hand and asking a question? Are you talking to the people? There's this rule in sales, if you've never heard it, and anybody who's in this training, watching this video, we're all in sales. One way or another, we're responsible for the revenue that's coming in, right? There's a rule in sales about the 3-foot rule. If you're 3 feet within me, or if you're within 3 feet, I'm going to say hi, right? I'm going to talk to you. I'm not trying to car salesperson sell you, right? Or sell you, but saying hi. And so that's engagement. But you can also do social selling engagement. LinkedIn, right? This ability I was just talking to you about, the head of cloud for the Army. Engagement there is I can put a comment in. In fact, some of my engagement, sometimes I can't really engage Paul, but what I do is I engage kind of to the side by tagging a couple of people I know who are in the cloud and saying, hey, you should check out Paul's thing. It's laid out really smoothly, blah, blah, blah. When I do that, and when you do that, it helps improve this know, like, and trust, work towards that know, like, and trust goal that we have. And I'll give you a quick example that somebody in U.S. Cyber Command. So if you're in cyber business, U.S. Cyber Command is like the top notch for all of DoD cyber. They all work independently, but they all work together, if that makes sense. And U.S. Cyber Command, they're writing content on LinkedIn and tagging me. It's because I'm visible and they know that I'm championing what they do, that they tag me in that. And at some point, you should be at that same level of visibility and engagement that people want to make sure that you're seeing their post because you come back and engage with it. You do something that furthers the dialogue, and that's engagement, and that's building the knowing for sure in the liking part. And then you can do the same thing in conferences. One other way to do engagement is the intro calls, right? If you take the time to do research and you write a call plan, then you can be having an intro call, not a sales call, not where you're trying to close a deal, but I'm just trying to reach out to you and have a meeting where we can introduce ourselves. I can learn a little bit more about you and your process, how you like vendors to do homework, and I can share about my company. So that's be visible, be engaged. And the third tip in here for know, like, and trust process is be helpful. So be helpful to the other person you're trying to meet with, this government buyer, et cetera. How can you help them achieve their goals? There's this idea of Stephen Covey talks about one of his habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so if you seek first to understand, what are they trying to get? Are they trying to get information when they talk with you, they reach out, when they're reaching out to industry, when the government's doing an RFI, things like that? Seeking to understand, not just compliantly writing something. It's like, hey, let's write an RFI. It's like, stop. First, figure out how can we be helpful? What is this agency, this program office trying to do with this RFI? Or in this meeting that we're going to have, what would they find really valuable? What have they, and if I do my research, I would know this, right? I'd be able to look and go, you know what? They did an industry day. And in the industry day, there was a slide that said what we're looking for from industry. And they talked about 2 or 3 challenges. Well, when I go in to talk with somebody and I'm trying to be helpful, I can point to and think about those challenges they mentioned. And if I try to weave them into my introduction, into some of the things, the content we create or the discussion we're having in an intro call, they will begin to like and trust us more because we're addressing what they need. We're being helpful to them. And so when you think about starting the know, like, and trust process, it really is be visible, be engaged, and be helpful. When you do those 3 things, you will increase your relationships because people are going to feel that you're helpful and they'll want to talk to you more. So if that makes sense, what I'm trying to say about the know, like, and trust process, put KLT into the chat. KLT, know, like, and trust. Trying to keep you from having to write the whole phrase out. KLT. So, okay, so we talked about how to build new relationships, right? With federal buyers. And the 3 tips today that I gave you, and I just want to remind you, is determine the right relationships that you want. When you determine those, then do the research on the people you're trying to build a relationship with. And then the third step is start the know, like, and trust process with these people that you've determined are the right ones to fit for you. So hopefully that stuff makes sense. If you found value in today's training, please consider becoming a sustaining member of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. We really appreciate that. Remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.